we learned that the Washington football team, after having an inclusive search and talking to coaches here, there, and everywhere, they climbed on the bandwagon with Dan Quinn. Dan Quinn is going to be the head coach. Dan Quinn. He exits the Cowboys after puking it up. The Cowboy defense sliced up by Jordan Love and the Green Bay Packers in that playoff game. Pathetic defensive football. And Dan Quinn got a head coaching job after that. How embarrassing is that? He takes over the woebegone Commanders, so it's not a great job. But let us discuss the brand spanking new head coach in the NFL. The question, will Dan Quinn's hiring change things significantly in Washington? So I've got Pepsi Challenge, Cracker Barrel, and Macho Man. And we will combine all of these things together. We're going to put them into a pot, and we're going to cook them on the oven for about 15 minutes, and we'll see what happens. We'll see what we get. We'll put some spices in there, too, and make it taste good. So, A, to answer the question, will Dan Quinn's hiring change things in any significant way in Washington? You can't see me because we're doing audio, but I'm shaking my head. No. Where have you gone, Joe Gibbs? A old Redskins nation turns its lonely eyes to you. Now, I've read a lot of stories about Dan Quinn, trying to get some intel here. I've followed him because we've been doing this for a long time. And the one constant theme about those that talk about Dan Quinn, they talk about how nice a guy Dan Quinn is. Good guy, right? People like Dan Quinn. And to that I say, yippee-ki-yay. I haven't seen anyone say what a great coach Dan Quinn is. I haven't seen that. Maybe that's out there and I missed it. But this hire is as exciting as going to bed and laying on a bed of nails. That's how exciting this is. Now, keep in mind, the Washington football team was sold a few months back. The guy that bought the team set a record for an NFL team purchase. He hired, the new owner bragged about he's going to be different, and he put a blue ribbon panel together to go out and find the next great coach. There were NBA guys, Magic Johnson, who owns part of the team, and Bob Myers, who was not the architect of Golden State, but was with the Warriors. And so Bob Myers was there, Magic Johnson, some other big names were deputized to find the perfect coach. And when the dust settled, they hit the tap. They tapped out and hired Dan Quinn. If you do the Pepsi Challenge, side by side, blindfolded, and I did it. The Washington football team fired Ron Rivera only to hire a slightly younger Ron Rivera. What are we doing? Like, seriously, what are we doing? It's a carbon copy. The term doppelganger would apply here. Now, what is my evidence? The only tangible difference is the age, and it's not even that dramatic. It's not like they got rid of Ron Rivera, who is 62, and they hired some 35-year-old coach. No, Dan Quinn is 53 years old, so there's a 9-year gap between those two. Both have defensive backgrounds. Let's go through the doppelganger status. Both have defensive backgrounds, right? The mic's falling apart. So both have defensive backgrounds. You've got Dan Quinn, who is one game over 500. That's it. One game over 500. You also have the fact that in Atlanta, he had just 2 winning seasons. That's it. Now, Ron Rivera has coached a lot longer, 19 years. He's only 1 game under 500. There's a 2-game difference between Dan Quinn and Ron Rivera. Rivera's 1 game under, Dan Quinn's 1 game over 500. And in 19 seasons as an NFL head coach, Ron Rivera somehow kept getting employment despite having only 3 winning seasons. Now, that in itself, he should write a book. How do you do that? How do you keep a job that long when you only had 3 winning seasons? Now, each of these guys, Dan Quinn and Ron Rivera, both made 1 Super Bowl. They lost. Both lost. Now, Dan Quinn gets the edge on this because his Atlanta Falcons have a record that I can't imagine will be broken in my lifetime or your lifetime. The Falcons, remember, blew a 28-3 lead to Tom Brady and the Patriots in Houston in the Super Bowl. The Dan Quinn hire is more direct evidence that bureaucracy is the death of all sound work. They put together the big bureaucracy, the red tape here, and they said all the right things. And in the end, they hired a guy who was essentially the same guy they just got rid of. The Commanders, now they enter the 2024 offseason with the most salary cap space. That's because they don't have good players. They have the most salary cap space in the NFL. They have the number 2 pick. That's because they sucked. And we assume they'll take a quarterback who may or may not stink. So good luck. All right, we pivot now to La La Land, where the new Chargers head coach was welcomed in a gala ceremony in Southern California on Thursday. Jim Harbaugh, he said all the right things, and one of the quotes stood out. Now, Harbaugh says that Justin Herbert is a, quote, crown jewel, is what he said, crown jewel of the NFL. So here's the question. Is that how you see it? So it's clearly not how I see it on this side of the microphone, but it is predictable. It is predictable that Jim Harbaugh would say this. Harbaugh last week claimed he was starstruck by Justin Herbert. Jim Harbaugh is a hype man. He's working at Cracker Barrel, buttering the biscuits of his quarterback. And so far, Justin Herbert has been a big tease. Right? He's got some good stats, and people get all horny for the stats, right? We're in an era where the nerds run football, and the nerds love their numbers. But heading down the path, just some real talk here, he's heading down the path of Dak Prescott. And that is not a compliment. Dak Prescott has put up great numbers. He's the stat bandito in Dallas, and then he turns into a fraud in the playoffs. Well, Justin Herbert is a stat merchant. And in moments where he's needed to make plays, he's been the merchant of doom. The numbers look better than the results, and has not shown the clutch gene. And don't forget, he gets a pass on this, but Justin Herbert was the quarterback for the Chargers when they gagged up a massive lead against the Jacksonville football team in the playoffs a couple years ago, and the Chargers offense did nothing in the second half, but he gets a pardon on that for some reason because everyone blamed the guy that does hot yoga who was coaching the Chargers at the time. But if you want crown jewels, there's only one. There's only one crown jewel in the NFL. His name is Patrick Mahomes. If you want to see him, he'll be playing in the Super Bowl against the 49ers. That's it. That's the list right there, Patrick Mahomes. All right, last word here. Headline from the Chatterbox. Is it true that prospective number 1 pick, NFL draft, college quarterback, USC, headliner, Caleb Williams, and his posse do not want the Chicago Bears to pick him? Say what? Now, our Fox Sports Radio colleague Colin Cowherd reporting that very topic this week. So what is your position? We'll assume it's true for the purposes of this part of the Maller monologue. What is your position on Caleb Williams attempting to circumvent Chicago? So it is a terrible look. It is unnecessary. And in the immortal words of Mike Tomlin, we want players who won't run from challenges. We want guys who run to challenges. That's not Caleb Williams. Right? If you're as good as the scouting report, you will find success even at Soldier Field, Chicago, a wasteland for quarterbacks. When I was a little boy, the macho man, Randy Savage, taught me that the cream will rise to the top. Oh, yeah. He taught me that. Chicago's a great town. I got family in Chicago. They love the Bears. They can't get enough of the Bears, even though the Bears have been an embarrassment for years. And they're thirsty for success with the Bears. And this, if he actually does this, and it's just a report now, but if this turns out to be reality where he's trying to go somewhere else, this would show a character flaw. You're already known, until proven otherwise, as the crying quarterback for whimpering in your mommy's arms after losing a college football game to the Washington Huskies at the Coliseum in L.A. And now you have cranked it up a couple of notches here that you don't think the Bears are good enough for you? You haven't proven anything. You're a nobody in the NFL. If true, that is another red flag, another big red flag for Caleb Williams, the crying quarterback. And we'll see if that turns out to be true. We got plenty of time to discuss the NFL draft and all the things around the NFL draft.